There are projects in the world that spent billions, but were just abandoned, left unfinished, unused, as if everything suddenly stopped. But the question is, why? These are the 12 most expensive projects that were completely abandoned. But before we start, don't forget to like this video. This means a lot to us content creators. Thank you very much, and now let's get started. Let's start with number 12, Sanzhi Pod City. In 1978, a developer started building a unique resort in Taiwan, near Taipei. The plan was to create a vacation spot for American soldiers based in Asia, but this wasn't an ordinary resort. The houses were shaped like UFOs, like spaceships that had landed on the ground. They were called pod houses, which means houses that were pre-made in a factory and just assembled on site. A lot of these were built on the edge of the cliff facing the sea. They looked modern, they looked futuristic. But after 2 years, the project suddenly stopped. In 1980, it was discontinued. The official reason was that they ran out of money. The investor lost money, so the construction was never finished. But there's another story that spread among the people. While the place was being built, workers supposedly destroyed a dragon statue to widen the road, according to Chinese beliefs. The dragon is a protector, and if you destroy it, there will be bad consequences. After that, accidents happened one after another at the site. Some people died. Some suddenly committed suicide. And because of this, the workers got scared. They didn't want to come back. Rumors spread that the place was cursed. Someone even said that it used to be a cemetery during the Dutch era. In the end, the investors backed out and completely abandoned the project. For almost 30 years, the houses just stood there, broken, rusting, and overgrown with plants, until it became popular among explorers and tourists. It was even used for MTV filming. It was called the Ruins of the Future. In 1989, someone tried to revive it. They invested $24 million. But engineers found out that the houses couldn't withstand earthquakes in Taiwan, so they were abandoned again. In 2008, demolition began, and by 2010, nothing was left. Only pictures remain as evidence that it existed. Number 11, Sathorn Unique Tower. Bangkok is known for its tall buildings, but there are also many buildings that were never finished. These are called ghost towers, buildings that were started but abandoned. In 1997, Thailand's economy collapsed. This is called the Asian financial crisis, a major crisis that stopped many businesses. Because of this, more than 300 projects were halted. One of them is the Sathorn Unique Tower, the most well-known abandoned skyscraper in Southeast Asia. It was planned to be a 49-story luxury condominium in the middle of Bangkok's financial district. Construction started in 1990. The investment was almost 1.8 billion Thai baht, equivalent to approximately 70 million US dollars. By 1997, it was about 80% complete. The entire building had already been constructed. It was close to being finished. But then the crisis suddenly hit, the Asian financial crisis. It was a major economic collapse in Asia. The company funding the project went bankrupt, and within just a few weeks, construction stopped. It was never resumed. The situation became even more complicated because of the developer's personal problems. In 1993, Rongsan Torswan was arrested and charged with plotting to kill a high-ranking court official. The case lasted for 15 years. He was convicted in 2008 but was acquitted in 2010. While this was happening, his son Pantasak Torswan managed the company. He refused to sell the building unless the original buyers were fully paid. That's why even now the tower is mired in legal and financial problems. There's no clear plan for what will happen here, but while it's on hold, something else happened. Urban explorers discovered that you can get inside if you bribe the guard, and for several years, hundreds of people would climb its 49 floors every weekend. No railings, no safety, the sides are open, it's dangerous. But the view from the top is absolutely beautiful. You can see the whole city of Bangkok, the Chao Phraya River, and the golden temples like Wat Yanawa. Meanwhile, in the basement, it filled with water and became home to thousands of fish to control the mosquitoes. In 2017, It was even used as a location for the Thai horror film The Promise. But now, it's already closed. It's strictly guarded, and anyone who enters can now be arrested. The ghost tower still stands today, unfinished. It's not being used, 80% complete. It quietly stands in the middle of a busy and modern city in Asia. Number 10, Wonderland Amusement Park. About 20 miles north of Beijing on the way to the Great Wall of China, they built something like a fairy tale castle. This isn't a real castle, it's part of a large theme park. It covers about 120 acres. It was planned to be the biggest amusement park in Asia. There would be roller coasters, a medieval village, a shopping area, luxury hotels, and an indoor playground. The castle would be the symbol. You could see it right away from the highway. It's like a way to attract people. In 1997, but after just 1 year, everything stopped. Why? There was a problem with the land. The developer and the local farmers couldn't agree on the payment for their land. The families didn't leave, and the government couldn't resolve the issue either. So the project was halted and eventually abandoned. By the time the funds ran out, a lot had already been built in Wonderland Amusement Park. The frame of the castle was already standing. There was an old design, there were steel parts, and there was a wide expanse of concrete all over the place. It was almost finished, but it was just abandoned. And this is where something unusual happened. The farmers who used to own the land came back. They took the place back, and that's where they started planting again, right in the middle of the unfinished buildings. There are photos from 2011 showing vast fields in between the concrete towers of the unfinished castle. There are farmers resting in the shade of some of the unfinished walls. The site is really unusual. It's like a mix of fantasy and real life. A theme park that also became a field. That's why some people called it the most expensive cornfield in Asia. Someone tried to revive the project in 2008, but the engineers found out that it couldn't withstand earthquakes in the area. That's why it was finally demolished in 2013, and in 2015 it was replaced by a shopping mall. Number 9, Michigan Central Station. It is located in Detroit. In 1913, it was one of the largest train stations in the world. It was designed by the same architects who made Grand Central Terminal in New York. Inside, it had marble floors, high ceilings, and large columns. The tower above is 18 stories tall at its peak. More than 4,000 people pass through here every day. It was a symbol of Detroit's strength, a city known for its industrialism. Eventually, everything changed. Cars became more common. People preferred to drive rather than take the train. The number of passengers gradually decreased until operations eventually declined. On January 6, 1988, the last Amtrak train departed, and after that, the station was closed. For several years, it was left in ruins. The steel, cables, and even the lights were taken. Everything that could be taken was taken. The roof was damaged. Rain came in, and the inside of the building even became a home for birds. For 30 years, it became a symbol of Detroit's decline. It appeared in movies like Transformers and in Eminem's music videos. Many plans were made to fix it, but none of them pushed through. Until 2018, when it was bought by Ford Motor Company for $90 million. And they invested almost $950 million to restore it to its former glory. It took 6 years and more than 1.7 million hours of work from skilled workers. There were people who secretly returned some stolen items, including parts of the original clock in the ticket lobby. As news spread that the station was being restored, Michigan Central Station reopened in June 2024 with an opening concert by Diana Ross and Jack White after being abandoned for 36 years. And when it reopened, it looked almost the same as it did in 1913. But now the roof doesn't leak anymore, and you don't have to climb through a broken window to get to the top. Number 8, Coleman's Cope. In 1908, a railway worker named Zacharias Lewala saw something sparkling in the sand near Luderitz, which was then part of German Southwest Africa. He picked it up and showed it to his supervisor, August Tauk. It turned out to be a diamond, and not just any diamond. The diamonds found at Coleman's Cove were of extremely high quality and were almost incredibly easy to find. At first, people just knelt on the ground and picked up the stones directly from the desert. Because of this, the German government declared the entire area a restricted zone and built an entire town in the middle of the desert. There were mansions on Millionaires Row. There was a hospital with the very first X-ray machine in the southern hemisphere.
Ginagamit para hulihin.
Diamond thieves. There was a casino, ballroom, bowling alley, theater, and even an ice factory that made cold drinks in the middle of the desert. Between 1908 and 1914, about 5 million carats of diamonds were extracted. It was one of the richest places in the world back then, based on income per person. But in 1928, a richer deposit was discovered about 300 kilometers away, and everything suddenly changed. People left. They left their houses and belongings. By 1956, nothing was left. The whole town was slowly swallowed by sand. The houses were filled until even the beds were buried in sand. Now, Coleman's Cove is one of the most photographed places in the world. A city slowly being swallowed by the desert. Number 7, SS United States. On February 19, 2025, a large crowd gathered in Delaware, Philadelphia, to watch its departure for the last time. After almost 30 years of just sitting at the pier, decaying and slowly falling apart, the largest ocean liner ever built by America moved again. It will not be taken to be turned into a hotel or museum, as had long been expected. Instead, it is headed to Mobile, Alabama to first clean out the hazardous materials before it is intentionally sunk off the coast of Florida to become the largest artificial end. The SS United States was built in 1952 at a cost of about $80 million, equivalent to more than $900 million today. The U.S. government provided a $50 million subsidy because it was secretly designed to be converted into a troop transport capable of carrying more than 14,000 soldiers during wartime. Its top speed was never officially released by the U.S. Navy, but it's almost certain that it reached 38 knots, or about 44 miles per hour. That's why it's the fastest ocean liner ever built. On its maiden voyage in July 1952, it crossed the Atlantic in 3 days, 10 hours, and 40 minutes, breaking the RMS Queen Mary's record by 10 hours. To this day, it still holds the record as the fastest passenger liner in the Atlantic. More aluminum was used in its construction than in any other project at that time. This was done just to make it lighter and faster. 4 U.S. presidents have sailed on it. Marilyn Monroe, Marlon Brando, Walt Disney, and John Wayne were also among its passengers. But in 1969, its operations were stopped because air travel had become more practical. In the following years, it was sold several times. Norwegian Cruise Line bought it but couldn't afford repairs, so they sold it due to high restoration costs. It was brought to Turkey to remove the old materials, and in 1996 it was towed to Philadelphia, where it stayed for 29 years. They were paying almost $1,000 per week for the docking fee, and it got even higher later on. The SS United States Conservancy tried to save the ship. They campaigned, raised funds, and were even supported by famous people, but it still wasn't enough. In October 2024, Okaloosa County bought the ship, just to sink it. A ship that once carried presidents and famous actors across the Atlantic. It ended up as an old structure visible from the IKEA parking lot. But on its final departure, people flocked to see it. The bridges were filled, roads were closed as it passed by. And for those who admired it, it was a farewell to something that could never be replaced. In 2026, the SS United States was already at the bottom of the Gulf of Mexico, about 22 miles off the coast of Florida, and it was slowly being covered by coral. Number 6, Ryugyong Hotel. In the middle of Pyongyang, there's a massive pyramid-shaped building with 105 floors, but it has never hosted a single guest. It's known as the Hotel of Doom. It stands 330 meters tall, even taller than the Eiffel Tower, and construction began in 1987. As North Korea's response to a South Korean company that built the tallest hotel in the world the previous year, Kim Il-sung's government wanted something bigger, a huge pyramid with 3 sections, and plans for 5 revolving restaurants at the top. It was supposed to be finished before the 1989 event, but it was never completed. Construction continued, and by 1992, it reached its full height of 1,000 feet. But in the same year, the Soviet Union dissolved. North Korea lost its main support, and the country entered a crisis that reduced its economy by almost 40%. Everything suddenly came to a halt. The crane at the top remained there for 16 years. To hide the embarrassment, it was as if the building didn't exist. It wasn't included on maps, it wasn't mentioned in the media. And there were tourists who saw the massive building. No one could explain what it was. In 2008, construction resumed when an Egyptian company arrived to install a glass exterior. By 2011, it looked finished from the outside, but inside it still wasn't. There was a European hotel group that planned to manage it, but they quickly backed out. In 2018, they even installed a huge LED screen that's used as a propaganda display. According to someone who got inside, the interior is just cement, and the only working elevator is slow and still has an operator. On the 99th floor, it's still empty. In 2024, the government tried to find a casino operator to finish it in exchange for revenue. But until 2026, no one has agreed yet. The Ryugyong Hotel remains vacant, a building that has been standing for almost 4 decades. At night, its LED screen lights up while the city around it still sometimes loses power. Number 5, Montreal Mirabel International Airport. It was built 55 kilometers northwest of Montreal on a vast area of almost 400 square kilometers. To make this possible, around 3,500 farming families were displaced from 100,000 acres of land. The purchase of that land alone reached $140 million. That's almost 8 times the original estimate. The terminal building, on the other hand, cost over $1 billion. The plan was for it to have 6 runways and 6 terminal buildings that could handle up to 50 million passengers each year. But in reality, only the first phase was completed. By 2004, the last passenger flight left. In 2016, it was demolished. Why did it fail? The problem was simple: a wrong prediction about the future. In the 1970s, the number of passengers was increasing, and planners thought that supersonic travel would become normal. They thought the Concorde would become the main airplane, so they built an airport for it, far from the city with long runways. But there was a problem. It was too far, 55 kilometers from the city. No train. The taxi to downtown, about $75. And instead of going straight to the plane, you have to ride a bus that adds almost 40 minutes to the trip. The airlines didn't like it. The passengers didn't like it either. In addition, Montreal's economy weakened and many businesses moved to Toronto. The demand decreased even more. In 1997, international flights were returned to the old airport, Montreal Trudeau International Airport, and Mirabel was completely abandoned. For many years, it was just left unused. They were still spending $30 million for maintenance, and it even cost $15 million just to demolish it. Now the runways are still there. Now Airbus just uses it for building and testing airplanes, and the land around it has gone back to being cornfields, on the same land that was once taken from families. A $1 billion airport built for a future that never came.
Number 4, Project.
In 1988, Saddam Hussein paid $25 million to the scientist Gerald Bull to create a unique weapon, a supersized gun. The plan was to build an enormous gun, about 156 meters long as a building lying on its side. It could send a projectile all the way to space, like a rocket, but just fired from a gun. Gerald Bull believed it would be cheaper than a rocket. No one supported him, except Saddam Hussein. There was a baby Babylon that worked and 2 big Babylon superguns. The project was supposed to be huge and could be used for space or for war. But Gerald Bull was killed and everything came to a complete stop. Number 3. Centralia. On May 27, 1962, 5 volunteer firefighters burned a landfill in the small town of Centralia. It was just routine. They did it every year to burn the trash before Memorial Day. But there was something they didn't know. That place used to be a coal mine, and underneath it, there was an open hole connected to the old tunnels. The fire went underground and found a coal seam. That's where the problem started. The fire never went out. Until now, it's still burning underneath the town. According to experts, it could continue for another 250 years. At first, the effect was small, but as time went on, the situation got worse. In 1981, a sinkhole swallowed a child. There was even hot steam. He survived, but it was clear how serious it had become. They tried to put out the fire. They dug, poured water, used chemicals, but nothing worked. In 1983, it was estimated that it would take up to $600 million to completely put it out, and most of the town would be destroyed. So what the government did was they didn't fix the problem. They just paid the people to leave. In 1992, the law was used to buy all the property and evict the remaining residents. The town slowly disappeared. The houses were demolished. Only the roads were left. And now only grass grows where there used to be a community. Today, only about 5 people remain there. There's a fire burning underground. It's quiet, but it never stops. A whole town disappeared because of a small hole. On November 15, 1988, the Soviet Union launched their own space shuttle, Buran, which means snowstorm. In appearance, it looks almost identical to NASA's shuttle, but there's a big difference. It doesn't have its own main engines. It's carried into space by a separate rocket called Energia. And even more surprising, it doesn't have a pilot. The entire flight from launch to landing is controlled only by computer. It went up into orbit, circled the Earth twice, and returned to the ground in just 3 hours and 25 minutes. And the most impressive part is it landed almost exactly in the middle of the runway. The error was only about 3 meters. That's something that even back then couldn't be done fully automatically. The project was huge. More than 150,000 engineers and workers were involved. And they spent around 20 billion rubles, which is equivalent to about $16 to $30 billion today. But even though the first flight was successful, it was never followed up. In 1989, the Berlin Wall fell, and in 1991, the Soviet Union finally collapsed. The project lost its funding and purpose. In 1993, Boris Yeltsin officially canceled it. The shuttle was left in a large building in Baikonur. No one was taking care of it, and it was no longer in use. In 2002, the roof collapsed. The shuttle was buried, and 8 people died. There was another Buran that was almost finished, 97% complete, but it never flew either. Until now, it's just been left there. This is what's unique about Buran. It didn't fail. It didn't fall short. It succeeded. But the country that made it, the Soviet Union, is the one that disappeared. A perfect project left behind because the world around it collapsed. Number 1, superconducting super collider. In 1987, Ronald Reagan announced a project that was supposed to become the most powerful scientific machine in the world. A massive machine that accelerates particles, even bigger than the Large Hadron Collider in Europe. The plan was for an underground tunnel 87 kilometers long, more than 3 times bigger than the LHC, and with an energy of up to 40 tera-electron volts. That's almost triple what the LHC can do. It will use 4,700 magnets, specially designed for this kind of machine, and 2 million liters of liquid helium to keep it extremely cold while in operation. If it had been completed, it might have discovered the Higgs boson a decade earlier than Europe. Construction began in 1991. They dug 17 shafts and built 23 kilometers of tunnel. Almost 2,000 workers were involved. But as time went on, the problems grew. The original budget of $5 billion reached over $10 billion. And on October 21, 1993, The United States Congress voted to stop the project. Even Bill Clinton wanted to continue it, but he was still the one who signed off on stopping it. It wasn't just money that was lost. It wasn't just the tunnel that was lost. America also lost the opportunity to be first. When it comes to the deepest questions in science in 2012, Europe discovered the Higgs boson using the LHC. But if the SSC had pushed through, it's possible that America would have been the first to do it, and they could have discovered even more things that, until now, we still don't know. Now the tunnels are still there, buried under Texas, filled with water and abandoned. A project that could have explained how the universe works, but it was stopped because of costs and politics.